Alrighty, y'all, we're going to go ahead and get started today. I wanted to give everyone a couple seconds to join us from the waiting room. Hello and welcome to our webinar, Expanding Access to North Carolina Cooperative Extension Records. My name is Taylor Wolford, and I am the Outreach Librarian at the North Carolina Government Heritage Library. I am very excited to introduce our guest speaker today, but I have a couple of accessibility things to cover, as well as some Library of North Carolina resources I will share with you all. So this webinar is hosted by the Government Heritage Library, and to learn more about the Library of North Carolina and the services that we offer, you can check out our website, which is going to be linked in the chat. To cover some basic accessibility settings for today's webinar, I do have live captioning enabled. So to view closed captioning, please use your mouse and hover over the control toolbar on the top or bottom of the screen and click closed caption or the CC button. Second, you can select either show subtitle or view full transcript options. As you can see here on the screen, that demonstrates which buttons you can click. To make any accessibility changes or changes to the caption settings, you can click on the closed caption button and select subtitle settings, and a new window will open. In the left pane, you can click on accessibility and make any changes you would like to those settings. If you have any questions or issues adjusting the webinar settings or any basic technology issues today, you can use the chat box to submit questions or request help from Government and Heritage Library staff who are waiting in the wings to help you. Today's program will be recorded and made available on the Library of North Carolina YouTube channel at a later date. If you are having any technical issues again during the event, we do ask that you ask for assistance in the chat. And after today's presentation, I will be facilitating a Q&A session with today's speaker. So please feel free to put any questions for the speaker in the chat, and we will address those questions after the presentation concludes today. Before I introduce today's lovely guest speaker, Laura Lethers, I did want to briefly cover and highlight some resources that we provide all North Carolinians with access to at the Government Heritage Library. If you're not familiar, the Government Heritage Library does manage and maintain, as well as continuously update NCpedia, which is an online resource on North Carolina history, people, culture, places, and events. We do have a number of NCpedia articles that cover the history of North Carolina's agricultural history, as well as North Carolina Cooperative Extension. So that is a great online resource to review to learn more about the history of the state and these topics. The library does provide access to a circulating print collection. Anyone who is a resident of the state of North Carolina or a state government employee can check out copies of books from our print collection with a GHL library card. And we do have a number of resources in the print collection that talk about North Carolina's fairly robust agricultural history. Additionally, we do have the state government publications collection. We at the Government Heritage Library are the official repository for managing, maintaining, and providing access to state government publications. And there is a pretty extensive number of North Carolina Cooperative Extension publications in this collection, which ranges from newsletters, reports, to charts and guidelines, all created by Cooperative Extension. A number of these resources that I've mentioned, the print and state government publication resources, are available on our digital collections website. And that is a website that is maintained by both the Library of North Carolina and the State Archives of North Carolina collaboratively. And I went ahead and searched in our North Carolina Digital Collections website last week to try to see what sort of resources are available to learn about the history of cooperative extension, which is where I found this really lovely publication that's shown on the right-hand side here, which covers a 60-year history of North Carolina Cooperative Extension home economics work. And so any of these resources would be searchable and downloadable on our North Carolina Digital Collections website. Alrighty, and before we get into the presentation today, I'm going to introduce our lovely guest speaker, Laura Lethers. So Laura is a digital project librarian with the Special Collections Research Center at NC State University Libraries. She is currently working on a Library Services and Technology Act funded digitization project that is making valuable North Carolina Cooperative Extension records more accessible to the public. Spanning most of the 20th century, these records document agricultural innovation, educational outreach, and community development across the state of North Carolina. If you would like to see a list of LSTA-funded grant projects in your local community within the state, we do have some grant information that we can provide for you all in the chat. And now I am very excited to hand it over to Laura to begin today's presentation. Thank you, Laura, in advance, and I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen.
Thanks, Taylor. Okay, if y'all will bear with me as I get my screens where they need to be. Okay. So we have the slideshow. Awesome. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here with us today. As Taylor said, we'll be talking about the history of NC State Extension, the grant project that I work on, which is featured here on the title slide, Expanded Extending Cooperative Extension History in North Carolina. And then at the end, I'll be doing a little live demonstration for you to show you how you can access all of the materials that I will mention today online. Just as a little side note here, the title of the project is Expanded Extending Extension, but I'm going to refer to it by its much shortened name of 3X for the rest of this presentation. Alrighty. So a brief overview of what we're going to be looking at today. First, I'm going to do a little introduction about the funding for this grant project. Then we're going to briefly go into the history of NC State Extension. I could probably teach an entire course or multiple courses on the history of extension in North Carolina and all the work that has been done in the last century, but I'm going to restrict myself to some major timeline events and a broad overview of NC State's role in extension. I'll explain what extension is for those of you who may not be as familiar, go through some important events and a few of the many people involved in making agricultural and cooperative extension into what it is today, and a little bit about what extension looks like now. After that, I'm going to talk about the extension materials we have available at NC State and some of the past projects that have been done that paved the way for the 3X project. We'll look at the 3X project more specifically, including its goals and content and some fun images that are part of the project. And then I'll do a brief demonstration for you to show where those materials are and how you can get to them, followed by the Q&A that Taylor mentioned at the end. All right, let's get started. So the background for this slide is actually a scanned black and white negative from the Farmers and Homemakers Conference held during African American Farm and Home Week in July 1954. I did want to note that all the images included in this presentation have been scanned by my graduate student assistants who work on the 3X project. So before we do anything else, I want to talk about the funding for the Expanded Extending Extension project. So the federal agency known as the Institute of Museum and Library Services provides money to the states under the Library Services and Technology Act that Taylor mentioned previously. In North Carolina, those funds are administered by the state's Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, and more specifically, the Library of North Carolina. It's thanks to these funds that NC State University libraries can digitize historical materials related to agricultural extension in North Carolina for the benefit of the public. The grant was awarded back in 2024, and the project began later that same year. It is a 2-year project, which is set to complete later this year. If you are in North Carolina and you work in a library and you have not checked out the LSTA grants, I would say go check it out because they offer them every year to my knowledge. So, to pull back a little more broadly before I get into 3X specifically, we're going to look at extension at NC State. The background image on this slide is another black and white negative of a man standing in a tobacco field in Vance County in 1967, very proudly holding up some sheaves of what I believe are tobacco leaves. So, a quick question for you all, very low threshold for participation today. I just want to know what year you all think the Agricultural Extension Service was established. It's a multiple choice question. You can just throw your answer in the chat. Is it A, 1899, B, 1910, C, 1914, or D, 1922? And then we'll see if I can see the chat, y'all. There we go. Okay, I see some 1910s, a few A's, a few C's. If you work in my department at NC State University Libraries, you're kind of cheating because I hope that maybe you already know this from other presentations in the past. Okay, I've got a couple of each one. I'm gonna give y'all another minute to get to your keyboards. My department head is laughing. Okay, so the answer is C, 1914. The Smith-Lever Act established the Agricultural Extension Service at the national level in 1914. Smith-Lever was an act of Congress that included tasking land-grant universities such as NC State, which was then known as the North Carolina College of Agriculture and Mechanic Arts, with administering extension programs to teach rural Americans about advances in agricultural practices and technology. So before we move on, I've got one more question for y'all. How many local extension offices do y'all think there are in North Carolina? A, 110, B, 42, C, 78, or D, 101? Got some C's, a D. We're all pretty close. I'll give it another second. Okay, cool. Thanks, y'all. So the answer is D, 101. There's actually one office in each North Carolina county and one for the Eastern Band of Cherokee. There's a little bit of NC trivia for you if you didn't know that, which I didn't know until the last couple of years. There are exactly 100 counties in this state. And fun fact, the 3X project actually includes materials representing all 100 of those counties, which I will show you how to filter by later in the demonstration. So, what is agricultural extension? So the mission of NC State Extension, as listed on their lovely website, is to extend research-based knowledge to all North Carolinians, helping them transform science into everyday solutions that improve their lives and grow our state. So Extension essentially connects research and education to communities beyond the university and seeks to serve the entire state. Originally, this meant a focus on rural North Carolinians who did not have easy access to the knowledge coming out of the land-grant colleges in the early 20th century. There was a concrete effort made to improve agricultural practices and increase productivity as populations were increasing. As we'll see, over time, Extension expanded beyond agriculture and the rural community to include other areas and urban communities. So, there are many areas within Extension today, but the three main focus areas are agriculture and food, health and nutrition, and 4-H youth development. Now, historically, these are more commonly known as agricultural, home demonstration, or economics, and 4-H clubs. And then within each of these areas, there are even more programs, including things like poultry extension, pest management, extension forestry, and horticulture, just to name a few with materials in the 3X project. As we learned before, there are 101 local extension centers in North Carolina, and NC State works with North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University to administer extension programs across the state. Both universities also collaborate with local, state, and the federal government to make extension happen. But to put this another way, extension is a series of partnerships. There are the government level partnerships, so federal with the US Department of Agriculture, state between the land-grant universities, local partnerships between the county offices and the Eastern Band of Cherokee office, and then there are, of course, the university partnerships such as the one between NC State and NC State. So, while this presentation today does focus on extension at NC State, I did want to mention the partnership between NC State and NC State University in a little bit more depth. Both of these extension programs date back to the establishment of agricultural extension by the Smith-Lever Act in 1914. Because of Jim Crow laws in North Carolina, white agricultural extension was established at what is now NC State, and African American extension was established at what is now NC State University. Since then, each institution has changed in size and in name many, many times, but the two land-grant universities still work together on North Carolina Cooperative Extension. So, we've covered a bit of this already, but here's a bit of a timeline view of the history of NC State Extension. In 1907, we have the hiring of the first white county agent. His name was James Butler. He was hired to conduct demonstration work on boll weevil eradication. If you don't know what boll weevils are, they are beetles that created a large infestation problem in the American South in the late 19th century into the 20th. They are very, very fond of cotton. In 1909, we have the establishment of the Boys' Corn Clubs. Corn clubs were the precursor to what eventually became 4-H programs. The clubs taught young boys how to grow corn on their own small plots of land. 2 years later, in 1911, home demonstration began with the formation of tomato clubs, led by Jane Simpson McKimmon, who we will hear more about later. In the girls' clubs, they grew their own tomatoes, then canned and sold the fruits of their labor. Over the next few years, the mothers of the girls created their own home demonstration clubs. Then in 1914, of course, we have the Smith-Lever Act, which establishes the Agricultural Extension Service and also African American Extension. And then in 1933, we have our first big expansion of extension due to various New Deal programs. It was able to expand on its activities. Then in 1937, we have a milestone for extension because it is the first year where there are agents in all 100 counties in North Carolina. Before that, many agents were responsible for large areas and crossed county lines often. Then in 1952, this expanded to 101 to include an office for the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. Then in the 1960s, 4-H began to expand to include urban youth. The population of rural North Carolina was said to be declining, and Extension was looking to expand to research and activities beyond farms. Extension programs in North Carolina integrated in 1965, with the two land-grant universities working together on agricultural extension in the state. Then in 1991, NC Agricultural Extension changed its name to North Carolina Cooperative Extension, which y'all might be more familiar with, to reflect its expanding focus on activities beyond only agriculture. Then in 2017, the name changed again at NC State to simply NC State Extension, where it continues to be an outreach arm of our College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. So, I did want to go into a little bit more detail about some of the early extension leaders affiliated with NC State Extension. Ira O'Shaub was the first 4-H director for NC State Extension. He gained this title in 1909 by leading the Boys' Corn Clubs. He then went on to become Extension Director in 1924, a position which he held until the year of 1950. Then we have Jane Simpson McKimmon, who I've already mentioned, led the Girls' Tomato Clubs, and she became the first state home demonstration agent in 1911, a position she held until 1937. Then L.R. Harrell was appointed state 4-H club leader in 1926 and held the position until 1963. He held the position for so long that the 4-H club started calling him Mr. 4-H. And then Ruth Current took over from Jane McKimmon as state home demonstration agent in 1937, and she served as in that position until 1963. You'll notice they all had very long careers in NC State Extension. All these figures appear often in the historical extension materials due to those long careers and their involvement with the development of various extension programs over time. So then we have our early African American extension leaders. One such was Alexander Bailey, the first African American agricultural extension agent hired in 1910 by the North Carolina Agricultural Experiment Station. G.W. Herring led the first 4-H club for African American youth starting in 1914 in Sampson County. Then John Ray became the first statewide African American youth club agent in 1915. An African American home demonstration organized in 1918 with Dizelle Foster Lowe and 40 other Black women hired as emergency agents during World War I believe the year after that in 1919. So, having been given a very brief overview of early extension history, now we are going to look at some of the past projects related to extension materials at NC State. This background image is actually a transparency slide of what I am pretty sure is a cornfield, but someone can correct me if I'm wrong about that. All right, so I have one question for this section, if y'all are still with me. How many digital extension resources does the Special Collections Research Center have available online? You can just take a wild guess. A, 11,000, B, 25,000, C, 32,000, or D, 48,000. Now, this is not how many digital collections resources do we have online. It's only the ones related to extension. So how many of y'all have a good guess? I'll give it a minute. have a guess of C, 32,000. Ooh, lots of C's. 32,000 looks like a good number. And then I have one of my colleagues who actually does know the answer. Cheaters! Okay, lots of C's and D's. Okay, thanks, y'all. Our answer is D. We have almost 48,000 resources in our community and extension topic on our rare and unique digital collections site. I will be able to show you this a little bit more concretely during our quick demonstration later on, but resources can be made up of multiple images. So for instance, one photograph could be a resource, or you could have an entire booklet as a resource with all of the individual scanned pages. So what that means is while there are 48,000 resources related to community and extension on our digital collection site, there are a great many more individual images related to extension than that. Just as an aside, there's also another topic just for agriculture that has quite a few materials in it as well. So we have done quite a few projects at NC State related to extension in the last 20 years or so. The projects on this slide are specifically past Library Services and Technology Act grant-funded projects. First, we have the Green and Growing project, which completed back in 2007. That project digitized over 20,000 individual pages of material related to the history of home demonstration and 4-H youth development in North Carolina. The next large project completed about 10 years later in 2018 and was titled Better Living in North Carolina, Bringing Science and Technology to the People. It digitized over 700,000 pages of material, including a very large amount of microfilm. Better Living was done actually in partnership with NC A&T State University, so materials from both institutions were digitized for the project and can be found on our digital collections site. Its focus was materials related to advances in agriculture over the 20th century and then their economic impact in North Carolina. And then most recently, in 2023, we have the Extending North Carolina Cooperative Extension History Project. This project is the direct precursor to 3X, and it was called 2X for Extending Extension. Over 8,500 pages were digitized for that project. There were more projects than just these 3 LSTA-funded ones that have included extension materials at NC State. There have been at least 4 other grant-funded projects conducted by NC State University libraries that included extension materials within them, which would explain why the community and extension topic on our digital collection site is the largest in number. So now we finally come to the 3X project itself. This transparency slide shows a 4-H club activity that dates to the late 1970s, so you can see a little bit of the fun outfits. There are actually quite a few pictures of 4-H club members learning archery specifically in the 3X materials, which I think is kind of interesting. They really enjoyed archery. So, expanded extending extension is obviously an LSTA-funded grant project. We are doing this project in partnership with the State Archives of North Carolina. The 3X project was meant to build upon previous projects, not just 2X, but the other 2 that I showed you, as well as many of the others that include extension materials. We set out to scan 36,000 individual pages/items across the course of the 2-year project. Our materials chronologically date from around the 1910s to the 1980s. And 3X has a specific focus on materials that originate from the county offices and through county extension work rather than just at the state level. The goal of the project was to get a more grassroots view of extension in rural North Carolina. And then the photo on the slide, we have a 4-H club boy with a beef cow in 1952. That is another black and white negative. So our 3X project staff and partners. Our NC State University staff include myself as digital project librarian for 3X, my supervisor Todd Kazmarek, the university archivist, Brian Dietz, the lead librarian for collection stewardship and discovery, who oversees all digitization in the Special Collections Research Center, and then of course my lovely graduate student staff who have been working on this project for the last year and a half. At any one time, I have about 4 students scanning for the project. And they're all amazing and the only reason that any of this work can get done. And then we have our lovely State Archives of North Carolina partners, Michelle Witt, Information Management Archivist, Anna Peitzman, digital access branch head, and then Colin Reeve, who has recently retired, who was previously the private manuscripts archivist, have all assisted us with this project. And what this partnership means is that while we scan materials at NC State's site, I also send my graduate student staff downtown to the building that houses the state archives, and we are able to scan their materials on their digitization equipment for the project. So logistics take a lot of collaboration back and forth, and they have been great partners on this project. So, due to NC State's very long history with Extension, there are many collections held by the libraries that are related to it. So far, we have digitized materials from around 10 NC State collections. Those materials have mainly been pulled from the North Carolina Cooperative Extension Service County Operations Records and the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences Department of Communication Services records. Another prevalent collection is the Extension Audiovisual Materials Collection. But beyond just university archives collections, we also have manuscript collections related to Extension. So far, we have done parts of the Jane S. McKimmon collection that we hold at NC State and the M. Edmund Aycock papers. Aycock was in 4-H and then went on to be a county cooperative extension agent. There are 4 collections over at the State Archives in North Carolina that we have digitized portions of as part of the project. They have their own Jane Simpson McKimmon papers. They have a Ruth Current papers collection, and the Smith and Alford family papers include materials created by Pauline Smith, who was an agent in Franklin County during the 1930s and 1940s. Lastly, we have the most recent collection, probably, which is the Dare County Master Gardeners Club records. So records like these can end up in different repositories for various reasons. NC State's archives was not built as early as the state archives, obviously, so some of the Jane Simpson McKimmon and Ruth Current papers ended up over at the state archives. Pauline Smith's materials are in the Smith and Alford family papers due to the fact that they are with the rest of the family papers. So there are lots of extension materials spread across many different repositories in the state. Alrighty, so after a year and a half working on this project, there are, of course, many materials available online, both from NC State University archives and manuscripts collections, and then the State Archives private collections. In total, my graduate students scanned just over 30,000 images in year 1, which, if you'll remember, we set out to do 36,000 images across both years. They almost reached that in just 1 year. We have consistently had a total of the 4 graduate students working over the course of the project. As I said, those 30,000 images were across just over 2,000 individual resources for year 1. And then in year 2, those numbers have increased to what you'll see here on the slide. 46,320 items was, I believe, the current number as of last week. So my students are very productive. And I would say we have definitely overachieved for our goal of 36,000, considering I think we still have about 6 months left on this project. So from NC State's University Archives collections, we have done documents, images, and audiovisual materials. All of these have focused on county operations and activities for the most part. This document on the left of your screen is a Through a United Agricultural Program publication. The North Carolina Agricultural Extension Service, as it was of course then known, had a hand in publishing these in various different counties. This one's from the County Operations Records collection. The image in the center is from NC State's Department of Communication Services records. So throughout the 20th century, university photographers would take photographs at various college and university events. And as a result, we have a large amount of black and white negatives dating from the 1940s onward related to various extension activities. So this one is of a young black boy watching over some pigs as they eat. This one was taken at a 4-H club event for Wake, Harnett, and Johnston counties, put on by what was then known as A&T College in 1952. The screen cap on the right of your screen is from our collection of extension audiovisual materials. The Aspect Show was a public access program that presented interviews, demonstrations, and examinations of aspects of agriculture, folk traditions, and rural life found in North Carolina. This one in particular is one of a series on horticulture. Aspect recordings are typically around half an hour long, and we have also digitized many of the later Now Show recordings, which were actually much shorter at around 5 to 10 minutes long. And then over at the State Archives, we have scanned from all 4 of the collections that were chosen for the project. Annual reports on home demonstration work are found in the McKimmon papers, and that's the image on the left. This one in particular is the 1927 to 1928 annual report for white home demonstration agents put together by McKimmon herself. The scrapbook in the center is one of many scrapbooks and conceit books found throughout their collections. They really focus on the activities of the home demonstration agents and club members. There are a lot of newspaper clippings and narratives of activities, along with photographs commemorating different events that they were doing. And then there is also a lot of professional correspondence and documents in the Ruth Current papers and the Smith and Alford papers. Shown here is an informal letter sent from Jane McKimmon to Pauline Smith, thanking her for the gift of some lavender that she was able to place within her clothing drawers to freshen the smell of her clothes. Alrighty, and a few more images just because I cannot help myself. Due to the CAL's communications records collection, we have so many images that I can use different images for every presentation. And I always enjoy putting different ones on here. So in the top left, we have images from a 4-H Club Congress. In the one on the right, I'm almost 100% sure he is posing in this picture because due to the context of the other pictures that were with this one, they're traveling on a train to the 4-H Club Congress in Chicago. And there are always a lot more people around them, so I think they were just having a bit of fun on the train. In the top right, we have some extension agent training, which I put on here because I just love the 1970s hair. So I hope you get some enjoyment out of that as well. In the bottom right, we have one page of a daily reminders book written by Jane Simpson McKimmon in 1919. On that page, her handwriting is a little bit difficult to read, but she traveled to Baltimore to attend an extension meeting, and she always put how many miles she traveled, and then exactly how many different conferences she attended. So she says here she attended morning and afternoon sessions. And then in the bottom left, we have a photograph from African American Farm and Home Week in 1954. It was also the Farmers and Homemakers Conference. So they're all standing in a field around a tractor. I believe they are doing a demonstration. So, finding materials. Now that we have seen some snapshots of what our digital collections have to offer, I'm going to take you on a little tour of our website to show you how to find these materials in the event you would like to use them for your research. If you happen to have gotten a little sidetracked since the beginning of this by your lunch or by thinking about the afternoon nap, which we all wish we were taking, I want you to follow the sound of my voice back to your Zoom window, wherever it might be hiding, if you are interested in seeing this demonstration of our website. And the background image on this slide is actually a group of 4-H Club members sent as the delegation to the National 4-H Club Congress in 1951. If you look really closely, you'll see L.R. Harrell, Mr. 4-H himself, in the top left corner of the group. All right, so I'm going to, if you'll bear with me, stop sharing this screen. And then I'm going to share a Google Chrome tab so that I can take you all where we need to be. Let me see. Is this going to come up at? Oops. Taylor, could you let me know which screen y'all are seeing?
I see your Google main
Okay,
page.
cool. Also, bonus points if anyone can tell me what my Google image background is. Okay, so in order to get to our collections online, you have a couple of different options. You can always just go to whatever your preferred search engine is on your preferred web browser, and you can Google NC State Digital Collections, or you can go straight to the library's website and navigate to the Special Collections page, which is how I think I'm going to show you all. So if you go to the NC State University Library's website, and you go to Find and Borrow, and you click Special Collections, you will end up on the Special Collections Research Center main page. And we have this lovely search bar where you can search all of our collection guides and many other pages. But for right now, I'm going to take you all straight into digital collections, which will bring me up to a different page, which is our Rare and Unique Digital Collections website, which is where all of the 3X digitized materials are. So just to give you kind of a brief walkthrough tour of this website, there are two search bars here. It does not really matter which one that you use. They both will take you to the same thing. And then we have some facets along the left side of your screen where you can limit your search. Some of these are collapsed because they end up being long. So you can see here at the top where I got the numbers for the community and extension topic. As you can see, there's almost 48,000. And then we have agriculture down here for 22,619. Of course, if you wanted to see our other topics, you can always click more and that menu will come up. The same is also true for any of our other facets, such as decades, buildings, location. The 3x materials are under collection. They are in order of size, so if you click more, you can always navigate to expanded, extending, extension that way and see all of the published resources. A little bit about our homepage. There are university history tabs here that you can easily click, but if you scroll down, you'll get more like the built environment. But there is one specifically on agriculture, forestry, and extension that has different topic tabs down here. And links directly to Better Living that I mentioned, Green and Growing, and then Cultivating a Revolution, which was another LSTA grant that digitized more extension materials. So the way I'm going to go right now is via collection. We're going to filter just by 3x, and it will take you to the 3x listing page, which will show you the beginning of all 3,272 resources that are currently available. You'll see some newspaper clippings and some aspect shows that are available on here. If you kind of knew what you were looking for and you wanted to filter by it over here, you could filter by format. You've got still image, photo, or video, or you could filter by whatever the original format was. You can filter by genre and even repository, which is important in this case because our partners' materials will come up under State Archives of North Carolina. And if you want to look at any of these, you can click one to see them in our image viewer. And then you can scroll through the thumbnails on the left to navigate to specific pages to see more things closely. If things are in typed text, you can search inside the item using OCR. A little note about the metadata included with each item, as this will be useful to you if you are doing any sort of research. You'll have your typical metadata such as title, topics, subjects, original format, and things like that. The digital project obviously says expanded, extending, extension. There is a funding line. But what I want to point out is when things are from the State Archives repository, there is a link to the State Archives website right here that will take you there. You can go to the Jane Simpson McKimmon Papers Collection Guide that the State Archives has on their website. And then also our rights and reproduction section. So if you were planning to use, say you really liked this image, you are of course able to download it, and you can download it in a couple of different ways so that you can use it. And more information on using these materials are on our rights and reproductions page. And you can read through this on copyright, reproduction and use, any sort of citation. And then of course, our materials held by partner institutions. So anything in the project that was that is owned by the State Archives, if you wanted to use it, you would have to go to the State Archives for permission to use it, even though it is housed on this site. So that is our individual image page. And of course you can search. So if I wanted to do, let's look up more 4-H Congress photos and see what comes up. You can see a lot more images. And then of course you can filter by. So if I just wanted text, you could go to format and go elsewhere. And you'll see different things that way. Say if you wanted to search, let's try scrapbooks. It'll bring up specific scrapbooks, and you can click in here and view various scrapbooks and things like that. So one last thing I wanted to point out before I let y'all go from this demonstration is that each of these materials, if they are housed at the Special Collections Research Center at NC State University Libraries, can take you back to the collection guide for the collection that the material came from. So for this one in particular, it came from the Cooperative Extension Service 4-H Youth Development Records. And if I click that link and I give it a minute, it will take you directly to the line in the collection guide for the physical box where this material came from, which can be really useful if you want to come to the Special Collections Research Center reading room and see the scrapbook in person rather than just seeing it online. Um, so that's always good to know. And then you can see the digitized content from this side and scroll through there. So I believe that will be done for my demonstration. And let me share my slides again, if you all will give me a moment. Thank you for bearing with me as I deal with all my screens. All right. So you should be seeing my demonstration slide again. It will allow me to slideshow. Okay. So in the slides, if you are seeing the PDF for these slides later on, I have put a demonstration recap so that you can see all of the things that I did and maybe get there again. Of course, you can navigate to the site from any search engine, the library's website, or directly with the URL if you happen to have it. You can search by keywords in both of those search bars. You can filter search results using the facets on the left. Of course, the two big ones related to extension would be community and extension in agriculture. And then you've got the collection facets with the most extension materials listed here, which is University Archives, Better Living in NC, Green and Growing, and of course, Expanded Extending Extension. You can download images like I show you, and you can navigate to the corresponding collection guide. So as we near the end, I just wanted to say this is my contact information if anyone has any questions about anything I mentioned in today's webinar. I've also included the SCRC general email for you to reach out to if you would like to access any materials for your research or just to look at, as well as a direct link to the request to use materials form on our website. And then there's a link slide at the end of the slide deck if you're looking at the PDF of them later on. But for right now, Taylor, I believe we are in time for questions.
Thank you, Laura, for such a wonderfully informative presentation. I'm now going to open it up to questions from the audience. So if you have any questions for Laura, please put them in the chat now, and I can moderate today's portion of the Q&R or Q&A. I do want to briefly also note that I will send out all of the links from today's presentation to everyone who registered, as well as the webinar recording at a later date so that you could view this again at a later time if you would like. And I will also share with everyone these slides from Laura's presentation today. So do not feel like you have to rush to save all of the things that we were discussing today and popping in the chat for the audience. So I'm going to open up to questions now. If you do have questions, feel free to put it in the chat, or you can put it in the Q&A button down at the bottom of the screen. Laura, I did have questions for you. I read them down. So when you were demonstrating for us the digital collections website, I noticed that it looked like you were using Boolean search operators. So without going too in depth into what that is or entails, can you briefly explain why, for example, you put your search terms in the website in quotation marks and what that does for the
Yes,
search?
absolutely. Thank you for catching that because it's such a habit for me now that I hadn't even thought about it. I could have, of course, put anything in that search bar without quotation marks, and it would bring up anywhere that that word was found in our collections. The reason that I put them specifically in quotation marks was because I wanted the exact phrase 4-H Congress to be somewhere in the metadata for the item, because I've done that search many times and I knew that it would bring up things that I wanted to see. So anytime that you are searching our site and you have a very specific word that you want to find somewhere in the metadata, simply put it in quotes and the search will have a much easier time pulling up things with that exact search line.
Thanks, Laura. I'm going to make sure that I send to everybody today also just some quick, easy guides on Boolean search operators, because if you're looking for very specific information, it can be a great way to navigate a website that has as much content as the digital collections website has it, NC State. So we have another question for you, Laura. Can I find pre-1914 images and info for researchers who are looking into ancestral enslaved people and slave owners?
So for They wouldn't be in the 3X collection specifically. I would more say less so on the digital collection site and more in NC State's collection guides. For some of our older collections, you might be able to find things related um, to those who are enslaved and things of that nature. I'm trying to remember if there are any, I can't remember any specific collections at the moment, but if you go to the special collections website that I started on and you type into the search bar, you will be able to find some things that are pre-1914. They'll be a little bit more sparse. I would say, to my knowledge, a lot of our materials are from the 20th century, but they do go back into about the 1890s.
Thank you, Laura. And I would say this would also be a instance with this type of research question where you would want to refer to the State Archives of North Carolina reference team. Um,
Absolutely.
the State Archives, as Laura mentioned, also has cooperative extension records and records of the state. And a lot of what they have predates 1914. So that might be useful. And we have another question here. Does the extension service, so I'm assuming any of the digitized materials you've worked on, Laura, have maps of farms for different counties for specifically genealogical research purposes?
That is a very good question. So, from the materials that I have come into contact with for 3X, I have seen this mostly ends up being aerial photographs taken of different farms and different experiment stations. A lot of them, I will say, are direct NC State affiliated, so not so much farms of individuals in the counties. There could possibly be more within our physical collections, but as far as what I can speak to that's been in 3X, there are a lot of aerial photographs of various farms that you can search on the digital collection site. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Laura. I will also share, that just brought to mind to me, I will also share with everyone here today the email to contact the State Archives of North Carolina Reference Team directly, and they will be able to assist you with more specific collection-based questions. And I can also provide for you all the Special Collections Research Center reference email in case there are specific materials you are interested in viewing in person at either of those locations. They would be the people that could really direct you and know the collections very, very well. Um, Laura, what sort of information, historical information is available about Duplin County specifically? Do you have any information about that?
So Duplin County, you can actually filter on the digital collection site by location. And for 3X, we have been putting counties wherever, if materials are mentioned to have come from a specific county, we label it as coming from that county. Um, it is one of the facets along the left side of the screen. I can actually, hang on. I can share this because one of my colleagues sent me a link in the chat that might prove useful for the person asking about maps. So we're back on the digital collection site. Um, and we have filtered by the topic of community extension, and then we have also typed maps into the search bar without quotes, and maps came up just fine. And you can look at different things that have come up related to maps specifically. So we have some survey maps, a map of A&T, soil maps, and things like that. So hopefully that will help with your map search. But as far as locations specifically, let me see. Say if I wanted to narrow this map search down just by the county, I can click locations and I can click more and I can find the county that I would like to look for and I can narrow it down. So say I just want to look at things related to Wilson County. This is some of the microfilm that probably was done in Better Living, if I had to guess. And there might be maps listed in there, or at least the word maps somewhere in there. But as I said, 3X has representative information from all 100 counties, so hopefully you'll be able to find something. I will say some of the counties are represented due to, in the 60s and 70s, they started this great habit of taking portrait photographs of all of the county extension agents and anyone affiliated with extension. So we have pictures of people that we wouldn't normally have pictures of, which is really awesome.
So
Hopefully.
Laura, just to clarify real quick, throughout y'all's digitization process, has there been records that you've digitized that you don't have a location for? And so the location search would not be helpful in that way in terms of what metadata is applied to the item?
There are some. I will say I have been pleasantly surprised by how many, especially with many of the negatives that we have been working with, they were very good about putting exactly which county that item is from. And in the county operations records, um, the records themselves are broken up by county. So
Wonderful.
it's always known there. Sometimes if something is not listed, it generally sometimes we can say we know this is Raleigh because it was NC State affiliated, it's somewhere on campus or something like that. But generally then the location is just North Carolina and you might have to do a little bit more Boolean search term, putting things in quotes to try to figure something out. But generally I would say I'm usually impressed by how specific to the counties the locations get and that we put in the metadata.
Wonderful. Yeah. So that certainly makes it, for those of you who are interested in doing more county or regionally specific searches, it seems like the way that the records have been described and then digitized makes it fairly easy for you to access that sort of information, which is very, very nice and not often or sometimes the case when you're doing archival searches.
For sure.
Um, we have another question from our digital projects librarian in the
Hi,
Library of North
Victoria.
Carolina. Yep. Were there any unexpected challenges that emerged during your project?
Oh, what a fun question from someone who also does projects like these. Unexpected challenges. There, knowing me, there are always going to be tech issues. If you've ever worked on a digitization project ever, or you've just tried to scan something in your house, you know that there can be any number of tech problems. So being able to troubleshoot is always a big one when you have a day where maybe internet's spotty or something goes down or something's not working the way you want it to. So I find it really rewarding to be able to work with my students to troubleshoot all of those issues because usually by the end of their tenure with me, they can troubleshoot everything themselves and they come to me afterwards very excited because they're like, Laura, I had this problem and then I fixed it myself and I didn't have to ask you, which is always very nice. Um, but as far as probably unexpected challenges with the project itself, I would say narrowing down the logistics of sending NC State graduate student workers to y'all's building downtown where the State Archives is housed. I'm not sure if that building has a name. Taylor, does the building have a name?
The DNCR building?
Okay, you just call it the DNCR building.
Yes. Yes.
So sending them down there, figuring out the logistics of that was a challenge. But our partners in the state archives have been super flexible and really helpful with us figuring out scheduling and training on their digitization equipment and being super supportive when my students are down there without me. Um, so I would say that that was a challenge that we worked through, but everyone has been great, so it worked out really well.
Yeah, I would say logistically, that's a very interesting aspect of your project you had to consider from conception is the fact that you're helping digitize records that are at a different institution. And most archival institutions will not allow you to take their materials out of their storage facilities, which means
Hmm.
you yourself have to their physical spaces and use their equipment, which I think comes with a lot of challenges in and of itself. And there's always going to be a learning curve with using new technology. So that's very interesting. What kinds of materials are included in extension records that people might not expect or realize?
I feel like I come across a lot of these and I'm blanking on all of them because someone asked me about it. I would say the most entertaining ones for me are usually 4-H related because 4-H activities are always super fun. So there's a lot of pool parties at various 4-H camps. As I said, lots of archery pictures. They really like archery, which is really cool. Horseback riding pictures, just lots of images of them having tons of fun, which is always nice to see. Um, some of the older home demonstration photographs are really awesome. Them just teaching each other how to do things in the kitchen, um, showing each other different tips and tricks, um, other things that people might not expect. Anything from survey maps of the 4-H camps to, gosh, I'm trying to think of things that usually don't come up. To yeah, 4-H club members sleeping on a bus somewhere or a train. That's always interesting. I did find it interesting when I was looking at some of the 4-H Club Congress photos. I was able to There was no location listed where the Congress was that year, but then I recognized the ballroom from a hotel in Chicago that I had actually been to myself, and I was able to put, "Oh, this is definitely happening in Chicago." So that's always really fun to see and different things like that. I would say the oldest photographs found in some of the scrapbooks from the state archives, and usually in newspaper clippings are always super interesting. Newspapers show a lot of the different county activities that otherwise never would have really seen the light of day as much at the state level. So that's always really cool to see.
Yes, I second 4-H being just a bunch of silly, funny, interesting materials. I remember there are some audiovisual materials y'all have digitized from Cooperative Extension records where young boys in 4-H went to forest school where they learned how to chop timber and manage and maintain forestry related areas and projects. Clearly, I don't know that much about it, but it is very interesting to see the
You,
education aspect.
yeah, you just made me think there are some images of forestry extension agents. So, I suppose men who worked at NC State, they're hugging trees in some pictures just to show how big the tree is, which is always really funny.
Yeah,
Um, I did want to point out something my supervisor actually put in the chat. If people find photos while looking through these materials that don't have identification, but they can identify the people and places in those photos, please reach out to Special Collections with that information because we always um, love enriching our metadata. So we would love to know that information. Thanks, Todd.
absolutely. Great comment, Todd. I will also say, like, if any of you are interested in researching extension more through the lens of genealogical or family history research, I envision that is where the Library of North Carolina Government Heritage Library can be a significant help, not just in providing sort of background information about the history of the state and cooperative extension, but also helping you search through specific vital records, land and property records, deeds, abstracts, things of this nature that we can help you find the original documents for it, should they exist. So really think of this as an ongoing project with library and archive staff here to assist you in whichever capacity they're able with the collections that they maintain and provide access to. So please do not hesitate to reach out to any of these groups if you think we can assist you with some of the things that we've mentioned today, whether it's you're interested in navigating the digital collections website and Laura's cooperative extension digitization project, or you're interested in seeing some of the records that exist in the Library of North Carolina. So we are actually at time today. I do want to wrap us up by saying to everyone who has been here today, thank you for joining us. And also, your feedback is very important to us. So we do ask that you take a few minutes to complete our online survey. We want to hear what you have to say, and also our participant feedback does really help inform our future programs and outreach events. And I want to thank Laura again for being with us today. This was really informative, engaging. Thank you all for joining us today, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.